She cheated on her loyal husband. At her father's funeral, she finally learned what he had sacrificed for him. The first time Claire Bennett saw her ex-husband after the divorce, he was standing beside her father's coffin. Not among the guests. Not near the back of St. Matthew's Chapel, where distant relatives and former employees had gathered beneath the pale November light. Daniel Carter stood only a few feet from Richard Bennett's polished walnut coffin, his head lowered, one hand resting gently against the wood. He wore a black suit Claire had never seen before. Simple, perfectly fitted. No expensive watch. No designer cufflinks. No sign that he was trying to impress anyone. Yet in a room filled with executives, attorneys, doctors, politicians, and men who had spent 30 years calling Richard Bennett a friend, Daniel looked like the only person who had truly lost something. Claire stopped in the doorway. The organ continued playing. People turned toward her. For 3 days she had moved through condolences like a woman underwater. She had accepted flowers, signed documents, chosen photographs for the memorial, listened to people tell her what a remarkable man her father had been. But the sight of Daniel cracked through the numbness. For one sharp second, grief disappeared. Anger took its place. She walked toward him. Her black heels struck softly against the marble floor. Daniel looked up before she reached him. 3 years had passed. 3 years since the apartment. 3 years since the divorce papers. 3 years since she had watched him carry one suitcase through their front door without asking her to stop him. He looked older now. Not dramatically. There was more gray near his temples. His face was leaner. A faint line crossed the bridge of his nose. His shoulders seemed broader beneath the suit. But his eyes were the same. Quiet. Steady. Infuriatingly gentle. "What are you doing here?" The words came out colder than she intended. Several conversations around them faded. Daniel looked at her. "I came to say goodbye to your father." Claire's fingers tightened around the strap of her handbag. "You lost the right to call him family when we divorced." Something moved across Daniel's expression. Pain, perhaps, but it disappeared almost immediately. "I know." He looked once more toward the coffin. Then he stepped away. No argument. No accusation. No reminder of what she had done. That had always been Daniel's way. And once, Claire had hated him for it. She had hated his silence. Hated the way he refused to compete. Hated the way he seemed almost comfortable being underestimated. Years ago, she had mistaken that quietness for weakness. She had mistaken modesty for failure. And by the time she learned the difference, she had already destroyed the only marriage in her life that had ever been built on something real. But Claire did not know that yet. Not fully. Not when she watched Daniel walk toward the chapel doors. Not when she saw her father's longtime attorney, Samuel Green, step out of the aisle and stop him. Samuel was 71 years old and had represented the Bennett family for almost 3 decades. He was not an emotional man. Claire had seen him deliver bankruptcy notices without blinking. She had watched him stand beside hospital beds with the same expression he used in boardrooms. But when he saw Daniel, his face changed. Samuel reached out. Then, unexpectedly, he embraced him. Not politely. Not formally. He held Daniel by both shoulders afterward and said something Claire could not hear. Daniel lowered his eyes. Samuel's mouth trembled. Claire stared. It was the first strange thing that happened that day. It would not be the last. Years earlier, before resentment had entered their marriage, Claire had loved Daniel because he did not belong to her world. She was 27 when they met. He was 29. She had gone to a charity planning dinner at a downtown hotel because her father insisted. Daniel was there because one of his engineering professors had purchased a table and needed people to fill the empty seats. Claire remembered noticing him because he was the only man in the room who did not seem interested in noticing her. Men usually knew who she was. Richard Bennett's only daughter. Heiress to Bennett Development. Private schools. European summers. Magazine photographs beside her. Father at charity galas. Claire had spent years learning to tell the difference between a man talking to her and a man talking to the Bennett name. Daniel barely looked at either. He spent most of dinner asking an elderly architect about bridge design. At one point, Claire interrupted. "You know he retired 20 years ago, right?" Daniel turned. So you've been asking him about concrete for 40 minutes. The old architect laughed. Daniel smiled. "He knows more about concrete than anyone here knows about anything else." It was such an unpolished answer that Claire laughed. Later, they stood near the hotel entrance while rain struck the glass. Her driver was late. Daniel offered her his umbrella. "What about you?" "I have a jacket." That jacket is going to be soaked. It's already ugly. She looked at him. He looked completely serious. She laughed again. 3 months later, she knew she loved him. Daniel was not impressive in the ways Claire had been taught to value. He drove an old Honda Civic that made a grinding noise whenever he turned left. He rented a one-bedroom apartment above a bakery. His shirts came from department stores. He owned one suit. But he listened. That was rare in Claire's life. When she talked about wanting to prove she could succeed without her father, Daniel did not reassure her by saying she already had. He asked what she wanted to build. When she complained that Richard controlled every decision, Daniel did not tell her to be grateful. He said, "Then make one decision he can't make for you." 11 months after they met, she married him. Richard Bennett approved immediately. That should have surprised her. Her father distrusted almost everyone. He had rejected 2 previous boyfriends within minutes of meeting them. With Daniel, there was no interrogation Claire knew about. No detective. No whispered warnings. Richard simply shook Daniel's hand after dinner and said, "Take care of her." Daniel answered, "I will." For 8 years, he did. At first, Claire believed that was enough. Their first apartment had leaking windows. They bought furniture secondhand. Daniel cooked because Claire could burn water. On Friday nights they sometimes ate takeout on the floor because they had not yet purchased a dining table. She was happy, genuinely happy. Then success began changing the people around her. Her childhood friends married financiers, surgeons, hotel owners, technology founders. Their lives became carefully staged photographs. Private islands, anniversary diamonds, penthouse views, Bentleys wrapped in ribbons. Claire told herself those things did not matter. Then, slowly they did. The change did not happen in one dramatic moment. It arrived through comparison. A friend asked at brunch, "Daniel still driving that old Honda?" Claire laughed. Another friend asked what company he worked for. Claire explained that Daniel consulted on biomedical engineering projects and was developing something of his own. What kind of company? It's complicated. So, not really a company. Everyone laughed. Claire laughed too. That night Daniel picked her up from the restaurant. The old Honda made its familiar noise turning into traffic. Claire stared out the window. "You should buy a new car." Daniel glanced at her. "This one works. It sounds like it's dying. It's dramatic." "I'm serious." "So am I." She looked at him. "You make good money. We have other priorities." "What priorities?" Daniel hesitated. That hesitation irritated her. "There's always some reason," she said. "Claire, never mind." She turned toward the window. Daniel reached across the console and touched her hand. She pulled it away. He noticed. He always noticed. But he did not force the conversation. At the time, Claire believed his silence meant indifference. Years later, she would understand that Daniel was already carrying a secret heavier than anything she could imagine. 3 years before their divorce, Richard Bennett had collapsed during a board meeting. Daniel was the first family member the hospital called. Claire was in Paris negotiating a hotel project. Richard refused to let anyone tell her. "It's exhaustion," he said. The cardiologist disagreed. His heart was failing. Slowly, irreversibly. Medication could delay the progression. Specialized treatment might give him years. But the condition was serious. Richard sat beside the hospital window while Daniel listened. "Claire needs to know," Daniel said. "No, she's your daughter. She's finally doing something without me standing behind her. This isn't about her career. It's exactly about her career." Daniel stared at him. Richard looked older than he had the day before. "If she knows, she comes home. She leaves Paris. She leaves the project. She spends every day watching me breathe. She deserves the truth. She deserves a life." Daniel argued. Richard refused. Eventually, Daniel agreed to remain silent for 1 week. 1 week became a month. Then 3. Daniel started driving Richard to specialist appointments. That was why he came home late. That was why his phone rang during dinner and he walked into another room. That was why money began disappearing from accounts he once used for vacations and furniture. Claire saw the consequences. She never saw the cause. "Another late meeting?" she asked one night. Daniel loosened his tie. "Something like that. You've been saying that for months." "I know. You never tell me anything." Daniel looked at her. For a second, he almost did. Then Richard's request echoed in his mind. "Not yet." Daniel kissed Claire's forehead. "I'm sorry." She stepped away. "Sorry doesn't tell me where my husband goes until midnight." He had no answer he could give. So he said nothing. Silence widened between them. Meanwhile, Richard's condition worsened. His company also began slipping. Bennett Development looked powerful from the outside. Its headquarters occupied 22 floors. Its logo appeared across construction cranes. But Richard had overextended during a major expansion. Free development stalled. Banks tightened credit. A lawsuit froze one of the company's largest projects. On paper, Richard Bennett was worth hundreds of millions. In reality, liquidity was disappearing. Samuel Green knew. Daniel knew. Claire did not. Daniel had something Richard needed. Years earlier, while still at university, Daniel had helped develop a biomedical monitoring system with 3 classmates. The company had survived quietly. Its technology was promising but unproven. Daniel owned 22%. Claire knew about it only as that little medical project. One night, she found him sitting on their living room floor surrounded by wires, sensors, and circuit boards. "You're still working on that?" Daniel looked up. "Almost every night." "How long has it been?" 6 years. Claire laughed. "You know most hobbies are supposed to relax you. It's not a hobby." She looked around the room. No office. No employees. No money. No headlines. Maybe it should be. The words hurt him. She saw it. But instead of apologizing, she went to bed. Months later, Richard needed access to an experimental surgical program his insurance would not fully cover. At almost the same time, Bennett Development needed emergency cash to avoid defaulting on a loan. Daniel made a decision. He sold his stake in the biomedical startup early. The buyer paid him $1.8 million. It was far below what Daniel believed the company might someday become. But potential could not pay hospital bills. Potential could not keep Richard's company from collapsing. Daniel wired most of the money into accounts controlled by Samuel. Richard was furious. "You're not doing this. It's done. That company is your future. Maybe. You could be giving up tens of millions." Daniel looked toward Richard's hospital room. "Companies can be rebuilt." Richard stared at him. Daniel continued. "Time can't." Richard cried that night. Daniel never told Claire. Then came the surgery. Richard's heart complications affected other organs. A partial liver transplant became necessary. Family members were tested. Claire was traveling. Richard refused to involve her until doctors had no other choice. Daniel volunteered. He was compatible. The surgery took hours. Daniel spent weeks recovering. He told Claire he had been sent to a remote engineering project. When he returned home, he was pale, thin. He moved slowly. Claire noticed. But resentment had already begun changing the meaning of everything she saw. "You missed my birthday," she said. Daniel set his bag down. "I know. You couldn't fly back for one night." "I couldn't." "You mean you wouldn't?" Daniel closed his eyes briefly. "I'm sorry. That's becoming your favorite sentence." He looked exhausted. She looked angry. Neither said what needed to be said. Claire walked away. Daniel stood alone near the door, one hand unconsciously touching the healing scar beneath his shirt. Months later, Adrian Cole entered Claire's life. He was a senior partner at a private equity firm negotiating with Bennett Development. Adrian understood wealth because he worshipped it. His suits were tailored in Milan. His watches cost more than most cars. He remembered the names of important people and forgot everyone else. At meetings, he spoke as though every room had been built for him. Claire noticed the difference immediately. Daniel never performed confidence. Adrian performed nothing else. The first time he flirted with her, she ignored it. The second time, she smiled. The third time, she allowed him to touch her hand. She knew it was wrong. That mattered less each time. Adrian told her everything Daniel had never said. "You're extraordinary. You deserve more. A woman like you shouldn't have to apologize for wanting a certain life." Then one evening he asked about Daniel. "What does your husband actually do?" "He's an engineer." "Successful?" Claire hesitated. That hesitation betrayed more than words could. Adrian smiled. "Claire, there's nothing noble about settling." The phrase stayed with her. Settling. Within weeks, she began using it to reinterpret her entire marriage. The old apartment was settling. The Honda was settling. Home-cooked dinners were settling. Daniel's quietness was settling. The man who had once made her feel seen now looked, through Adrian's eyes, like evidence of how little she had demanded from life. The affair began in a hotel bar after a business dinner. Adrian kissed her in the elevator. Claire had time to stop him. She did not. The next morning, guilt came. By afternoon, she had buried it beneath justification. Her marriage was already broken. Daniel had become distant. She deserved happiness. Adrian understood her. Every lie became easier when repeated. For 3 months, Daniel suspected something. Then one Friday evening, he came home carrying groceries. Claire sat at the kitchen island. Her phone lit up beside her. Wine glass. Adrian. Daniel saw the message beneath the name. Still thinking about last night. The kitchen became silent. Daniel set the bags on the counter. A carton of eggs shifted against a bottle of milk. Claire looked at him. He looked at the phone, then at her. How long? Daniel, how long? His voice was quiet. She almost wished he would shout. 3 months. He looked down. His wedding ring caught the kitchen light. Do you love him? Claire swallowed. No was in her throat. Pride pushed past it. I think I could. Daniel closed his eyes. Only for a second. When he opened them, something inside him had changed. A month later, divorce papers sat on the same kitchen island. Richard came to see Claire the night before she signed. He looked thinner. His skin had a grayness she blamed on work. Don't do this, he said. Claire stared at him. You came here to defend Daniel? I came here to stop my daughter from making the worst mistake of her life. You don't know my marriage. Richard almost laughed. I know that man better than you think. Then maybe you should have married him. The words were cruel. Richard flinched. Claire regretted them instantly. But apology would have required humility. She had very little left. He loves you, Richard said. If love were enough, no one would ever leave. Richard stared at her for a long time. Sometimes the person carrying the heaviest burden is the one making the least noise. Claire rolled her eyes. Please don't turn this into one of your speeches. Richard left 10 minutes later. In the hallway, he passed Daniel. Neither man spoke. But Richard stopped. He placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. Daniel nodded. That was all. The next morning, Claire signed. Daniel packed one suitcase. He left almost everything else. The apartment. The furniture. The wedding gifts. Claire stood with her arms crossed while he carried his clothes toward the door. Adrian waited downstairs. You can keep the apartment, Daniel said. I don't need charity. It isn't charity. You always do that. Daniel stopped. Do what? Act like you're above everything. Like none of this touches you. His expression changed. You think this doesn't touch me? His voice was still controlled, but something beneath it had finally cracked. I built my life around you, Claire. And I spent 8 years waiting for you to build something for yourself. The words landed. Daniel stared at her. Claire continued. I'm 35. I don't want to keep pretending that being content with nothing is some kind of virtue. His jaw tightened. I was never content with nothing. She laughed bitterly. You'll never become the kind of man a woman like me can be proud of. Silence. Daniel looked around their home. The scratched dining table. The framed wedding photograph. The plant they had almost killed 3 times. Then he looked back at her. I hope someday you understand what you were looking at. He picked up the suitcase. At the door, he paused. Claire thought he might turn around. He did not. The door closed. Adrian's car waited downstairs. For a while, Claire believed she had chosen correctly. Adrian took her to Monaco. He bought her a diamond bracelet. They stayed at hotels where employees knew his name before he arrived. Photos from their life drew thousands of likes. Claire smiled and everyone. Her father rarely commented. Daniel disappeared completely. He did not call, did not send messages, did not insult Adrian, did not expose the affair. He vanished with such discipline that Claire sometimes found herself offended by it. She had imagined he would regret losing her. Instead, he seemed to accept it. What she did not know was that Daniel spent his first year after the divorce in a small industrial building near the river. 3 desks, 1 second-hand laboratory bench, 3 employees. 1 idea. He rebuilt the biomedical company he had once sold his stake in. He began again from almost nothing. There were nights he slept on the office couch. Mornings he drank black coffee because the refrigerator contained nothing else. Investors rejected him. Hospitals ignored his calls. His first prototype failed inspection. The second overheated. One of his first employees quit. Daniel kept going. Not because he wanted Claire to see him succeed. At first, he did not want anyone to see him at all. Pain became routine. Routine became discipline. Discipline became momentum. Meanwhile, Claire's perfect new life began cracking. Her father's health deteriorated. One afternoon, Richard collapsed again. This time Claire was in town. At the hospital, the cardiologist finally told her the truth. Your father has been managing advanced heart failure for years. Claire stared at him. Years? Richard looked away. How many years? 3.5, the doctor said. Claire's face went cold. You knew? Richard sighed. Yes. And you didn't tell me? I didn't want your life to stop. Claire felt betrayed. She became obsessed with fixing him. She called specialists. Read research at midnight. Flew him to consultations. Richard resisted. During those months, he repeatedly asked the same question. Have you spoken to Daniel? At first, Claire ignored it. Eventually, she snapped. Why would I call my ex-husband about your heart? Richard looked toward the hospital window. You're right. He never asked again. Adrian became less patient as Richard became sicker. At first, he sent flowers. Then assistance. Then excuses. I have a dinner. I can't cancel Singapore. We already moved this meeting twice. Claire accepted it. Successful men were busy. She had once used the same excuse herself. Then, 18 months after the divorce, she discovered Adrian with another woman. The scene was almost embarrassingly ordinary. Claire arrived unexpectedly at a hotel where Adrian claimed to be meeting investors. A pair of red heels sat beside the bed. A woman's dress hung over a chair. Adrian did not bother lying. What did you expect? He asked. Claire stared at him. What? We haven't been a real couple in months. My father is dying. And I'm supposed to stop living? The words struck somewhere deep. Claire remembered a kitchen, a grocery bag, a husband asking how long. She looked at Adrian. You cheated on me. He gave a humorless smile. That's rich coming from you. Claire slapped him, then walked out. She sat in her car until sunrise. For the first time in years, she thought about calling Daniel. She opened his contact. Her thumb hovered over the screen. Then she closed it. Pride still had one room left inside her. Her father died 11 months later. No dramatic last words. No final reconciliation. Claire had spent 3 nights beside his hospital bed. At 2 a.m., Richard finally slept. A nurse told Claire to go home. Shower. Eat something. Come back in the morning. At 4:17 a.m., the hospital called. By the time she returned, the machines were silent. Richard Bennett was gone. 3 days later, Daniel stood beside his coffin. After the funeral, Claire returned to her father's house with Samuel Green. Rain tapped softly against the windows. The study smelled exactly as it always had. Cedar, paper, old coffee. Samuel placed a sealed envelope on Richard's desk. Your father asked me to give you this after the funeral. Claire sat down. What is it? Something he should have told you while he was alive. Her stomach tightened. Samuel remained standing. Claire opened the envelope. Her father's handwriting filled several pages. Claire, if you are reading this, then I failed to find the courage to tell you while I was alive. She stopped. What does that mean? Samuel looked toward the window. Keep reading. Claire lowered her eyes. There are truths we hide because we are ashamed. Others we hide because someone loves us enough to carry the shame for us. Her fingers tightened around the paper. 3 years before your divorce, my doctors told me my heart was failing. Claire inhaled sharply. Daniel was with me when I found out. Her eyes stopped. She read the sentence again. Daniel, he went with me to appointments when you believed he was working late. Memory hit instantly. Midnight. Daniel loosening his tie. Her standing in the kitchen. Another late meeting? Something like that. She swallowed. I made him promise not to tell you. He fought me on it. I won because I was stubborn and because he loved you enough to understand why I was afraid. Claire looked up. Daniel knew. Samuel nodded. All of it. She returned to the letter. When my health worsened, Bennett Development was also in serious trouble. I had built a large company, but I had also built large debts. I was ashamed to let you see how close I had come to losing everything. Claire's heart began pounding. Samuel walked toward a filing cabinet. He removed a folder. Inside were bank documents, loan notices, medical bills, legal agreements. Claire stared. Dad was broke. Not exactly. He had assets, but the company was close to default. One failed project could have triggered everything else. Why didn't anyone tell me? Your father. Samuel paused. And Daniel. Claire looked at him. Samuel slid another document across the desk. A sale agreement. Carter Biomedical Research. 22% equity. Sale price, $1.8 million. Claire's hand went cold. I remember this company. You should. He used to work on it at home. Samuel nodded. He sold his entire stake. Why? Samuel pushed the hospital invoices toward her. Claire looked at the pair. Carter Engineering Holdings. Her breath stopped. No, Daniel paid for the treatment insurance wouldn't cover. Claire shook her head. No, he also provided enough capital to keep your father's company from defaulting during the worst year. Claire looked at the sale agreement again. How much would those shares be worth now? Samuel hesitated. Samuel. The company was acquired last year. How much? $480 million. Claire stared at Daniel's ownership percentage. 22%. The calculation arrived before she wanted it. More than 100 million. He gave that up? He gave up what might have become that. For Dad. For your father. For the company. For the employees who would have lost their jobs. Claire stood abruptly. No. Daniel would have told me. He promised Richard he wouldn't. Why? Because Richard was proud. Claire laughed bitterly. That's ridiculous. Yes. Samuel's voice hardened. But your father was also afraid you would give up your own life to save his. Claire looked down at the papers. Daniel gave up his instead. Samuel said nothing. Claire turned toward the fireplace. Then Samuel spoke again. There's more. She did not want more. But he opened another folder. Medical records. Claire saw Daniel's name. Donor. Her eyes moved across the page. Partial liver transplant. Compatibility. Consent. Her lips parted. What is this? Samuel's face changed. Your father developed complications before one of the procedures. His liver was failing. Claire stared. Daniel donated? He was compatible. When? Samuel gave the date. Claire nearly dropped the page. It was 6 weeks before her 34th birthday. Daniel had disappeared for work. He returned thin, pale, moving carefully. She had yelled at him for missing dinner. You could have flown home. I couldn't. You mean you wouldn't? Claire covered her mouth. The room blurred. He was recovering from surgery. Yes. And I. She could not finish. Samuel looked away. Claire remembered seeing Daniel that week. He had reached for a plate in the upper cabinet and suddenly stopped, his face tightening with pain. She had asked what was wrong. Pulled something at work. She had rolled her eyes. You're 33, Daniel. Not 70. He smiled. She walked away. Claire lowered herself into her father's chair. Why didn't he tell me after? Samuel's answer was quiet. Because by then you had already started seeing Adrian. Claire looked up. He knew? Yes. How? Richard told me Daniel suspected something before he saw the message. The kitchen returned again. Daniel's face. His wedding ring. Do you love him? Claire whispered. Oh God. Samuel placed one final envelope on the desk. This one is from Daniel. She stared at his handwriting. The letter was dated 2 weeks before the divorce. Claire unfolded it. Richard, the latest scans look better. Harris believes you may have several good years if you follow the treatment plan, which I know you won't unless someone bullies you into it. Claire laughed once through tears. Her father had hated doctors. She kept reading. Don't worry about the money. The shares are gone. There is no point mourning what they might become. Companies can be rebuilt. Time cannot. A tear landed on the page. Please don't tell Claire about the surgery or the money. Not now. Her breathing became shallow. She already feels trapped between the life she thinks she should have and the life we built together. I don't want gratitude to become another chain around her. Claire stopped. She could not continue. Samuel said nothing. She forced herself. If she chooses to leave me, let her leave freely. Claire pressed her hand against her mouth. The next words were worse. I love your daughter. That means I want her choice to be real, even if it breaks me. Her tears fell faster. If she stays because she learns what I sacrificed for you, I will spend the rest of my life wondering whether she stayed because she loved me or because she owed me. Claire bent forward. Her shoulders shook. She continued through blurred vision. When I saw Adrian's message, I wanted to tell her everything. I wanted to put the hospital bills on the kitchen counter. I wanted to show her the scar. I wanted to ask whether the man she chose had ever bled for her family. Claire sobbed. But the letter continued. Then I realized that if I did that, my sacrifice would stop being love and become leverage. I won't do that to her. Take care of yourself. Daniel. Claire lowered the pages. For several seconds, there was no sound except rain. Then years of memories rearranged themselves. The old car. Not failure. Money had gone elsewhere. The cheap clothes. Not laziness. He had sold his future. The late nights. Hospital corridors. The 6-week absence. Surgery. The quietness. A promise. The way Richard had trusted him. The way Daniel never defended himself. Claire bent forward until her forehead touched the desk. For the first time since she was a child, she sobbed without caring who heard. She had not merely cheated on a loyal husband. She had betrayed the man who had quietly kept her father alive. And Daniel had allowed her to despise him rather than make her stay out of guilt. The next morning, Claire drove to the address Samuel gave her. She expected another modest office. Instead, she found a renovated warehouse overlooking the river. Glass walls, laboratories, engineers moving through bright rooms. A sign near the entrance read, Carter Biomedical Systems. Claire stared. Inside, a receptionist approached. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for Daniel Carter." "Do you have an appointment with Mr. Carter?" "No," the receptionist hesitated. Claire looked beyond her. Through the glass, Daniel stood beside a prototype with 4 engineers. White shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows. No expensive suit. No performance. Just Daniel, building something. Exactly as he had always wanted. He saw her. His expression changed. He excused himself, then walked toward her. What happened? Claire almost broke again. Even now, after everything, his first assumption was that she needed help. "Samuel gave me the letters." Daniel stopped. A long silence. He wasn't supposed to do that until after the funeral. The funeral was yesterday. Daniel looked away. Claire's voice trembled. "Why?" He knew which part she meant. "Because your father needed help. That's not enough. It was for me. You sold your shares." "Yes." "You gave up over $100 million. No," Claire stared. Daniel continued. "I sold shares worth $1.8 million. What they became later doesn't change what they were then. You gave him part of your liver. He needed it. You almost died." "I didn't. You never told me." "He asked me not to. I was your wife." Employees turned. Daniel opened a conference room door. "Come inside." She followed. The door closed. Claire stood near the table. "I thought you didn't care about our future." Daniel said nothing. "I thought you had no ambition." "Nothing. I thought I was carrying you." Daniel finally looked at her. "I know. Why didn't you defend yourself? What would you have wanted me to say?" "The truth." And then, Claire froze. Daniel stepped closer. "You discover your father is dying. His company is failing. Your husband sold the most valuable thing he owned and went through surgery to save him." His voice remained calm. "What would you have done?" Claire's answer came as a whisper. "I would have stayed." "Exactly." The word stopped her. Daniel's eyes were wet now. "I didn't want that." "You didn't want me to stay?" "I didn't want a prisoner." Claire's face crumpled. "When I saw Adrian's message, I wanted to tell you everything." Daniel turned toward the window. "I wanted to put every bill on that kitchen counter. I wanted to show you the scar and ask whether your new man had ever given anything for someone he loved." His voice cracked. "But if I had done that, what would I have become?" Claire could not answer. "A man using sacrifice to buy loyalty." He shook his head. "I couldn't do it. I was wrong." "Yes." "No cruelty. Just truth." "I was shallow." "Yes." "I betrayed you." "Yes." "I'm sorry." Daniel looked at her. "I know." Claire stepped closer. "Can you forgive me?" He took a slow breath. "I already did." Hope rose in her face. "Then maybe we could." "No," one word. "Soft." "Final." Claire stopped. Daniel continued. "Forgiveness doesn't restore trust. I know. You chose Adrian. I chose wrong. You chose what you wanted then. I don't want it anymore." Daniel's expression softened. "But I'm not the man you left in that apartment anymore." Claire looked around. "So this is because you're successful now?" Daniel almost smiled. "No, then what?" "Peace." The word landed harder than anger. Daniel looked through the glass, toward his employees. "After you left, I spent months wondering what I could have done differently. More money, better clothes, better car, bigger house." He paused. "Then I realized I had spent years making myself smaller, so everyone else could feel safe." Claire listened. "Your father needed me. You needed me. The company needed me. Everybody needed some version of me." He touched the table. "I didn't know what I needed. And now I do." Claire understood. The punishment was not that Daniel had become successful. It was not that his company had recently signed contracts worth hundreds of millions. It was not that business magazines were beginning to call him one of the most innovative biomedical founders in the country. Money could be envied. Status could be chased. But peace? She could not compete with peace. Daniel had built a life in which her regret had no authority. Claire reached into her bag. She removed Richard's letter. "I think Dad loved you more than he knew how to say." Daniel looked at the envelope. "He told me." Claire froze. "When?" "3 days before he died." "You saw him?" Daniel nodded. "He asked the nurse not to tell you." Claire almost laughed. Of course. Her father and Daniel. Still protecting her with secrets. "What did he say?" "He apologized." "For what?" "For making me keep the promise." "And what did you say?" "That there was nothing to forgive." Claire lowered her eyes. Then Daniel said, "He was proud of you." Her lips trembled. "I wasn't there when he died." "That doesn't erase every day you were there when he lived." Claire looked at him. For the first time, she saw Daniel without measuring him. Not by salary, not by clothes, not by what he owned, not by what he could provide. She simply saw the man, the husband who had loved her, the son her father had chosen, the man who had saved Richard's life, the man who had lost his marriage without destroying the woman who betrayed him. "Thank you," she whispered. Daniel nodded. Claire walked to the door. This time, she did not ask him to call. She did not turn around hoping he would stop her. Some losses deserved to be accepted. Over the following year, Claire changed quietly. She sold the penthouse she had bought during her years with Adrian. She resigned from the executive board position Richard had given her. Then she applied for an operational role inside Bennett Development. People thought it was symbolic. It was not. She arrived at construction sites before sunrise, learned the names of foremen, sat with accountants, read old contracts, listened to employees who had known her father before she was born. For the first time, she understood how many people's lives existed behind the word company. She also discovered more pieces of Daniel's sacrifice. A retired project manager told her that during Bennett Development's worst year, payroll had almost failed. Then an anonymous emergency loan arrived. Daniel, a former accountant, remembered a man who came in after midnight to restructure financing. Daniel, a nurse, remembered him sleeping in Richard's hospital chair. Daniel. Everywhere Claire looked, the man she had called unsuccessful had quietly been holding up pieces of her world. The knowledge hurt, but she stopped using pain as an excuse to chase him. Instead, she used it as instruction. When Bennett Development created the Richard Bennett Foundation, Claire directed the first grant toward families struggling with cardiac care costs. Reporters asked why. She simply said, "Because some people shouldn't have to choose between time and money." Daniel never returned romantically, and eventually Claire understood that redemption did not always mean restoration. Sometimes redemption meant becoming worthy of forgiveness, even when forgiveness did not include another chance. 1 year after Richard's funeral, Claire returned alone to the cemetery. Autumn leaves covered the path. She carried no expensive flowers. Her father had hated formal arrangements. Instead, she brought a cup of terrible gas station coffee, the kind Richard used to drink on construction sites when she was a child. Claire sat beside the grave. "You were right," she said. Wind moved through the trees. "I hated when you were right." She smiled. "I think you enjoyed it." A leaf landed beside the headstone. Claire looked at her father's name. "For years I thought success meant being seen." Her voice softened. Daniel never needed to be seen. Footsteps sounded behind her. Claire turned. Daniel stood several yards away. He held white chrysanthemums. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Claire moved aside. Daniel approached. He placed the flowers beside Richard's headstone. "You still come?" she asked. "Sometimes." Claire nodded. The silence between them was different now. No accusation. No desperation. No hope disguised as conversation. "How's the company?" Claire asked. "Chaotic." "So good." Daniel smiled. "Very. And you?" He thought for a moment. "Good." Claire believed him. He looked at her. "You?" She glanced toward Richard's grave. "Getting there." Daniel nodded. They stood beneath the trees. Once, Claire would have filled the silence. She would have apologized again, explained herself, asked whether he ever thought about them, asked whether there might still be some future. Now she let silence remain, because Daniel had taught her something she had spent half her life refusing to understand. Not everything valuable announces its value. Love does not always arrive in diamonds. Strength does not always raise its voice. Sacrifice does not always demand to be witnessed. And the richest person in the room is sometimes the one who has nothing left to prove. Daniel checked his watch. "I should go." Claire nodded. He turned. "Daniel." He looked back. Claire took a breath. "I'm glad you didn't tell me." He seemed surprised. "If you had told me everything during the divorce, I would have stayed." Daniel said nothing. "And for years, I probably would have told myself staying fixed what I did." She looked toward the grave. "But it wouldn't have. No, I needed to learn that gratitude isn't love. Guilt isn't loyalty. And forgiveness isn't ownership." Daniel's expression softened. Claire continued. "I needed to become someone who could understand what you sacrificed without believing that sacrifice meant you owed me another chance." For a long moment, Daniel simply looked at her. Then he gave the same quiet smile she remembered from the beginning of their marriage. Not romantic, not regretful, warm. Your father would be proud of you. Claire looked down. Tears came, but they no longer felt like punishment. When she looked up again, Daniel was walking toward the cemetery gates. Years earlier, she had watched him leave their apartment carrying one suitcase, while another man waited downstairs in a luxury car. She had believed Daniel was walking away with nothing. Now she understood. He had left with the only things money could never replace: his dignity, his loyalty, his integrity, and the freedom to become himself. Claire had kept the apartment, the lifestyle, the wealthy lover. Everything she once believed represented success. Yet she had been the poorer one. But that did not have to be the end of her story. She touched her father's headstone. Daniel had sacrificed money to save Richard. He had sacrificed his body to give him more time. He had sacrificed years of his own future to protect a company that did not belong to him. And in the cruelest act of love, he had sacrificed his chance to keep his marriage by refusing to use those sacrifices as chains around Claire's heart. She had learned the truth too late to save what they had, but not too late to understand it. Not too late to change. Not too late to become the kind of woman who could finally recognize quiet love when she saw it. At the cemetery gates, Daniel paused. He looked back once. Claire stood beneath the golden leaves beside her father's grave. She did not wave him back. She did not chase him. She simply smiled. Daniel smiled too. Then he walked on. Claire watched until he disappeared beyond the trees. For years, she had imagined revenge as something loud. A ruined career. A public humiliation. A lover returning only after becoming rich. But Daniel had never taken revenge. He never exposed her affair. Never told her friends what she had done. Never appeared at a gala just to show her what she had lost. Never used his wealth to make her feel small. He simply built a life that no longer required her approval. And that was far more powerful. Claire finally understood that the greatest consequence of betrayal was not watching the person you hurt become richer, stronger, or more successful without you. It was realizing they had been extraordinary all along, and your own blindness had made them look ordinary. She had once believed Daniel needed to become the kind of man she could be proud of. Standing beside the grave of the father he had quietly sacrificed everything to save, Claire understood how backward that belief had been. Daniel had never needed to become worthy of her. She had needed to become capable of recognizing his worth. The cold wind moved through the cemetery. Claire picked up the empty coffee cup. Before leaving, she touched the stone one final time. I understand now, Dad. Then she walked away. Not toward Daniel. Not toward the past. Toward a life she would have to build for herself. No shortcuts. No borrowed status. No man whose success could define her. No excuses for what she had done. Only responsibility. Only gratitude. Only the difficult freedom of becoming different. Because some people discover the value of love when they receive it. Others discover it only after they lose it. Claire had lost hers. But losing Daniel had taught her what Richard tried to tell her years before. The person carrying the heaviest burden was often the one making the least noise. And sometimes the strongest love was the one willing to walk away without revealing how much it had sacrificed to stay. Daniel did not become successful, so Claire would regret leaving him. He became free when he stopped needing her to understand him. And Claire's redemption did not begin when she discovered the money he had given away. It did not begin when she learned about the surgery. It did not begin when she saw the company he had built. It began much later, at a quiet grave beneath autumn trees, when she finally accepted that his sacrifice did not entitle her to his return. That was the truth she had spent years running from. Love was never measured by how much someone could display. It was measured by what they were willing to carry when nobody was watching. Daniel had carried everything. Her father's illness, his financial collapse, his fear, his secrets, Claire's resentment, even her betrayal. And he had carried them without asking the world to applaud. She had once mistaken that silence for weakness. Now she knew better. Dignity did not shout. It did not demand revenge. It did not need a room full of people to understand. It simply walked away and glowed.